today's talk is going to be an amazing insight, a bunch of insights from the Lubavitcher Rebbe from the year 5751. In general, the Rebbe is giving us a general overview of what our relationship is with God and bringing down the ultimate revelations and understanding and connections to God that we want, which is going to be in the third Beis Hamikdash, in the times of the complete and total true redemption. And speedily in our days, we're very close there, it says. And we, through our consciousness, can make this happen in reality, in physicality, in practicality. Okay.
Recording in progress.
Okay. So welcome. We're going to learn the Sikha from 5751, 1991, a talk about how we can connect to God in the highest, best way, connect with other people in the highest, best way, and bring the ultimate consciousness to us and to the entire world by our activities of our mind, basically, our understanding and our insight of our mind, to the point where we'll be able to see clearly an understanding of godliness, like it will be in the times of the total and complete redemption. It's called the Geulah Shlaima in Hebrew, the true and complete redemption, which we are very near right now. We're on the verge of the highest understandings of godliness in the world, and the way to get to it is through learning what the Rebbe is explaining to us in these books. Dvar Malchus, it's his talks where he explained to us very passionately, enthusiastically, with a lot of deep insights. And these talks are not the easiest thing to understand, because the Rebbe breaks all boundaries and limitations of the way we saw the world, the way we saw and understood God, and the way we understood and saw ourselves and our souls for since the beginning of time. So the Rebbe just gives us another way of deepening more and more our understanding. Now, from the deepening of this understanding, we can understand really more about our connection to God and how we connect to God, how we connect to ourselves. And we need to learn these things and internalize it. It doesn't happen in a second then understanding. It takes a lot of rehashing, rethinking, meditating on it. So we do this class every Sunday, 12 o'clock, Pacific Standard Time, California time. I also teach another class on Mondays at 5:30 California time. You're welcome to join on Zoom or on Facebook, and I try to post, at least this class, the Sunday class, I post on YouTube channel whenever it comes out good, on the Beis Chana channel, BAISCHANA, and our website of beischanaca.com. Okay, so welcome. We're going to delve inside. This is a talk from the Parsha, for those who know Hebrew, Matos Masei, 1991, where the Lubavitcher Rebbe talks about the fact that we're in the 3 weeks. We just are trying to strengthen ourselves in a process of reorienting the way we thought about how we related to our situation in terms of the destruction of the temple, which has happened during these 3 weeks. It happened on Tisha B'Av, on the 9th of Av, which comes out this coming Saturday this year, and the fast is going to be pushed off to Sunday. So we talked a little bit last week, I believe, about the fact that the fast is being pushed off, and that's the Rebbe says it's very significant of his whole line of thinking, that we're in an era that we're so close to the times that we're looking forward to, which is the third holy temple. You see the beautiful picture of the temple here behind me. This is what we're yearning for, where we'll have the true and complete revelation of godliness in its fullest form. That the Rebbe says we're not trying to just go back to what it was in the first temple or the second temple, and we're not just trying to rebuild what we had. It's like, coming out of the generation now after the Holocaust. We're not trying to go back to Europe and rebuild what we had in Europe. We're trying to move forward. Our goal now is not to go back 2,000 years ago to the times of the destruction. Our goal is to move forward to what we anticipate and think about how we're going to bring out the new era, which is really the time that God planned the whole creation to be in the fast forward of what we will have the Rebbe says in our generation, the third and complete redemption. So the goal is forward thinking, not we're yearning to what we had. So therefore, the Rebbe says our goal is not to just focus on just how we're mourning, and the better we mourn and the better pain we feel, the better we are. The more righteous we are, the sadder we are that we lost our temple. No, the better we are is when we're moving forward to think about how we're going to draw down the godly consciousness and the revelations of the third temple and the times of Mashiach that are coming. And the Rebbe says very clearly the way to do that is to welcome Elisa. The way to do this, drawing down these higher revelations of the times of the third temple, is through learning Chassidus. This gives us the guide. The Rebbe's teachings, especially about the times of Mashiach, but any of the inner dimension of Torah, which is Chassidus, which is the soul of Torah. Torah has the body and it has the soul. Just like anything, if you're going to explain something or do something, there's the action or the process, the external process, and then there's Dina, are you a host also? Do I need to make you a host? I'm going to make you a host so you can mute people. 1 second, I'm sorry. Right? Yeah, if whoever can mute themselves, that's helpful, but I'm going to make somebody else a host also. Here we go. Make host. Okay. You're a host.
Recording stopped.
Okay. Oops. Why did that stop? We're going to go back to the recording, unless somebody turned off. So, Dina, can you put back on the recording, or do I need to do that?
I think you are the only one who can record it.
Okay, so what did I do?
I think you made me co-host. Yeah. Actually, I have an option to record.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay. Recording in progress.
Thank you. Okay, great. So welcome back again. So here we go. So let's focus on what the Rebbe says in the talk of this past week's Torah portion of 1991, where he's giving us more of a specific insight into a lesson that we can learn from Aron Hakohen, Aron the high priest, about his love, his understanding about our souls, and how he was able to have extra special powers of blessing the Jewish people, because he understood the insights. He had the insight, he had the understanding, he had the sight to be able to focus in on all our souls as they are one and united, as they're all equal and all the same, before they came into our bodies and were divided into different types of people and personalities, different levels of souls, different revelations, and the divisiveness that we have. So he was able to tune into everybody from their highest soul level. And how was he able to do that? He obviously was a special person, had a high soul, but the Rebbe explains to us what his level was. And the reason the Lubavitcher Rebbe explains to us what the level of Aron Hakohen is and what he understood about the souls is not just so that we can be all impressed with Aron Hakohen, Aron the high priest. The Lubavitcher Rebbe wants us to learn a lesson. He makes it very clear and he said this in last week's talk that I gave last week. I didn't highlight this, but the Rebbe says over there on that whole lesson that he taught last week, he taught a lesson from the previous Rebbe, who got it from one of the other Rebbes, about make your place holy. And we talked about last week about how each moment we can make extremely holy, depending on nothing other than the divine providence that we're here at this time with our capacities. That means it's a holy thing. Meaning, if we tune into God wherever we are, when we are, who we are, we can make that a holy experience, and it's meant to be because God ordained it by divine providence. So that idea, the Rebbe expounds on it last week, and he says this was taught to us by the previous Rebbe and made public so that we implement this into our daily life, not just to have a nice idea or a nice concept, that we can make every place holy, we can make every place as holy as Eretz Yisrael, as Israel. The idea is so that we implement it. So I'm taking that same concept that the Rebbe explained last week to here, to this week, when he's talking about Aron Hakohen, or whenever the Rebbe explains a concept, an idea, a virtue, a way of understanding, a way of serving God, it's not just so that we be enamored by the greatness of that tzaddik or that rabbi or that woman who had that virtue. The goal is to learn and that we're able to implement it. So this, whatever we're learning today, is for us to implement the concepts into our life. So I'm going to try to help, bring it into a way that we can implement it. And you're also welcome at the end to add your insights or your questions of how these concepts can be implemented into our daily life, because they're nice ideas, nice lofty ideas, but really it's, if you look deeply into it, it's the whole, every time the Rebbe speaks, it really is about the times of Mashiach. It really gives us the whole picture of, we go back to the whole concept, why the world was created, why we're here, and what our mission and purpose is here, and what we're aiming towards. So in today's talk, that also obviously is included, because this is the Rebbe's goal and aim in all these talks, of what we can do to bring the third and ultimate redemption, which is the Geulah Shlaima, the total and true and complete redemption, which is our goal, and was the goal of the whole creation of the world. So Aron Hakohen. So first of all, let's go to the Rebbe explains there was the first temple, there was the second temple, and there's a third temple. So in the first temple, there was most of it was built by an arousal from above, meaning God gave Shlomo, King Solomon, great wisdom. He gave him great wealth. He gave him everything that was necessary to create a holy temple. And it wasn't so much the work of the Jewish people. It was more a revelation and inspiration from above, with a lot of revelation. And King Solomon was able to build this amazing edifice, which was incredible and awesome. The only drawback that the Rebbe explains is that it didn't come from the people, the Jewish people, so much working towards it and building it or making it happen, bringing this revelation. It was all revelations from God above. So therefore, the revelations were so intense. The revelations of the first temple were so high, so sublime. It didn't take effect into the people to be able to last forever. The people weren't like vessels or in tune to this light. The light was above and beyond them, and they weren't able to receive all this inspiration and divinity and godliness and wonderful revelations of godliness. They just weren't up for it. So that was the disadvantage, and the temple didn't last forever. The second temple, actually, the Jews really worked hard to make it come about. They yearned for it. They had to work for it. They were in exile, and they really toiled to get the second temple built. So it took a lot of their prayers and a lot of their hard work and a lot of the negotiations with the rulers of the time, and it was a lot of effort of a lot of the Jewish people putting into it, and they had to pray and yearn, and they actually got the second temple built. But it wasn't on the revelations of the second temple weren't on such a high level as on the first temple. There were quite a number of things that were missing in the second temple. Some of the miracles that were in the first temple weren't there in the second temple, and it was limited. And that temple also didn't last completely forever. The Rebbe says that in the third temple that we're aspiring to, and we'll have speedily in our time very soon, any moment, there will be this combination of both it will be a relationship between us and God. There will be God giving His miraculous revelations, but it will be a proactive part from our part. We are going to be aspiring and yearning for godliness to be revealed. We will be studying about God. We will be proactive in a relationship with God to bring these revelations into this physical world. So we will be struggling with getting it done within the world, and we will be putting our efforts into it, but we will be able to receive help from above with miracles that will come from above too. It will be a meshing of the two together. Now, in order to be able to bring this revelations into the concealed world, in a way that we're having this relationship with God. So we have to be tuned into God, and we do that through learning these teachings of Chassidus, teach the inner dimensions of Torah. The more we learn the inner dimensions of Torah, the more we're capable to have a real relationship with God and be able to be vessels to understand that it takes an effort on our side to connect to God, and then God can make miracles happen through us. So God wants to reveal himself, but he doesn't want to blow us out of the water with revelations that are totally just above and beyond our comprehension or anything to do with our day-to-day life. God wants the miracles to be part of our day-to-day life, that we actually make a vessel for God's miracles to be drawn into our life. So that is the relationship that we're building with God now, and that is the relationship that we'll have fully revealed in the times of Mashiach. So we did do a class on a few weeks ago also. All these classes, almost all of them, are posted to the Beis Hamikdash channel on YouTube. That class was about activating miracles. We create the possibility for God to reveal miracles into our life. But God wants to do miracles, but we have to be open and available for that. So we have to be making the opportunity for God to be a partner with us and bring revelations into our life, bring the miracles into our life. So for that, we have to have an open mindset that God can create miracles for us. So, and how do we get into that mindset that God can create miracles for us? Is by learning more about God and more about ourselves and more about how God hides himself and how he reveals himself, what we can do to reveal God. And it's all about us being able to understand God in our mind more and bring it to an awareness that it's real. God is really real, and God is unlimited and powerful and above and beyond, and wants to reveal himself in our limited finite bodies in this finite world, in not just in a finite way, but also in an infinite way. And that because God is beyond infinity and finitude, God can reveal himself in an infinite way in a finite world if we're ready for it. Okay, we're the receivers. We're the finite. We're trying to receive the infinity in this finite world. So if we're ready to receive it, God can give it to us. Because God is not limited. God doesn't have to just reveal himself in a limited form in a finite world. God is beyond limitations. He can reveal himself to us. It was infinite self, his miraculous self, even in our finite, limited brain, finite eyes, finite senses. But that's through the teachings of Chassidus. We can come to that ability to be sensitive and understanding and aware and receptive to God's infinity. So this is the concept of the third holy temple, that will have that 100% clearly. And this is also a level that Aron Hakohen had reached. Aron, the high priest, he was on such a high level that he was able to see also the levels of godliness as he's infinite and as he's beyond this world, and also the within this world. There's an ability to be able to draw down godliness from above to below, his infinity, and there's an ability to be able to go and ascend from below to above. When we're in a state of pain or we have opposition, and we overcome and override the below, and we ascend, and usually we ascend in prayer. We ascend when we say the Shema, when we work on ourselves to see that God is in this world, beyond this world, but within this world. That's the main aspect of saying Shema. We ask God to reveal himself to us through prayer. That's an ascent from below. And usually through Torah learning, we're able to bring an understanding of beyond this world into this world. The Torah is God's wisdom, and we can understand godliness in a higher level when we learn God's Torah. So God's Torah is usually from above to below, revelation, and usually prayer is understood as below to above. Now, to put the two together, mesh the two together, that was the ability that Aron, the high priest, had. He was on such a high level, and that's why he could see Jews and their souls as they are from a very, very high level of divinity within God's, what's called God's thought. But a high level of our souls come from a very internal revelation of godliness, very essential, God's essence. And when it comes down, when our souls come down to this world and they come to bodies and there's less revelation, we don't understand or comprehend necessarily our connection to God. But Aron was able to see that we're really truly in our essence the same source, and we're all connected to God the same way. So in the root of our soul on its level that's our superconscious part of our soul, which we don't necessarily are aware of in our conscious awareness, that level of our soul is all equal and all one within godliness. And Aron could relate to the Jews from that level. When he saw a person, big, small, man, woman, child, learned, not learned, holy, whatever it is, the soul, when it comes to the body, comes to different bodies on different levels. But he could see the soul as it was beyond, 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 as it was in its original form, where all our souls are from one place in godliness. So because he was on that level, he was able to also do the blessing of the holy priest, of the high priest. Blessing of the priest, the priestly blessing, it's not just the high priest. Any Kohen, any priest can bless. The blessing has in it two aspects. It has in it the level of a bracha, which is a bracha is a blessing, which is drawing from above to below, and it has the level of a prayer, which is from below to above. So he was able to see that both the above to below and the below to above are really equal. They're all the same. When we're tapping into God's level from beyond this world, God as the creator from before he created revelation and concealment, God's essence, the two are the same, the above to below, below to above. So the priestly blessing has in it a blessing, and it has in it a prayer, and the two are put together as one. So that's why there's three stanzas to it. The Yavarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha, that's from above to below. Yeh Hashem panav alecha v'yichuneka, that's below to above. That's the prayer part of it. And Yisa Hashem panav alecha v'yasem lecha shalom, that's the third part. That's the two of them molding together. So that's being able to see how everything's all godliness in its because you're able to see godliness in its soul root, that it's all one. Whether God reveals himself, whether God conceals himself, God is beyond revelation and beyond concealment. So when we come from that place, anything is possible, and we can see everybody as equal. And that's why also Aron Hakohen was able, in his merit, the Jews had it says the clouds of glory in the midbar, in the desert. So what are these clouds of glory? They were protection, and they were, as long as Aron Hakohen was alive, that they had those clouds of glory protecting them from their enemies, from the sun, from being in the desert for 40 years. When he passed away, those clouds left. Those clouds were surrounding every Jew equally. So there wasn't a division. If you were higher, on a higher level, you got more protection or from these clouds, and if you were less. They were equally surrounding the whole Jewish people entirely. This was not the case when it came to the man, the heavenly bread that they came. Each person got a certain amount allotted to them. And some people had to walk further to go get theirs, depending. Some people, as Rabbi Wolf explained this, the Shabbos had Amazon Prime delivered straight to their door. The man came directly into their front door if they were on a higher level, and if they weren't, they had to actually work harder to get their sustenance. So that was from Moses, who was very high intellectual, very high soul, but his level of insight drew down a blessing that was perfectly pinpointed, specific for each person on their level. And the same thing with Miriam, Moshe and Aaron's sister. In her merit, the Jews had water in the desert, and it said also, in order for them to get the water, they all got as much water as they needed, but they had to actually, each head of tribe had to go to the well and kind of make like a little filtration system or like a stream of water that they would carve from the well to their allotted place in the desert. Each tribe had their specific location. So they had to actually draw the energy of the well and make a vessel to each specific location of each tribe got their water. Whereas with Aaron, it was just the clouds just surrounded everybody equally. And that represented his ability to see the good in every Jew and every person that was there on the highest form, in the most sublime way, that's beyond the divisions and beyond, what you deserve or don't deserve, or how much you get or how much you don't get. So this lesson, like I said at the beginning, the Rebbe doesn't just tell us this lesson just so that we have a nice, interesting fact added to our knowledge base. This is a lesson for us that I was saying, if we want to be able to bring all these this concept of three, which the Rebbe talked about. Three is like a strengthening. We want the third Beis Hamikdash, and we want the full blessing of drawing from above and drawing from below, which is the prayer, and putting them together. That is through being able to go to see godliness as God is beyond any sort of division, any sort of limitation. So, and understanding that even though God chose to limit himself into a finite world, God is not limited by that choice of being defined in the finitude of what we can understand in a finite world and finite brain. We can understand that God is beyond this, and God can perform the greatest miracles. God can bring the true and complete redemption in a way that we can't even imagine, because God is not limited. So when we're ready for these awarenesses, we are able to also break through our own inner limitations of what we think the way our life has to be or must be, or the way people should treat us, or the way that what we need to accomplish is through a certain amount of rules and limitations. When we have a passion and a desire to reveal godliness, and we know that we're conduits for God's revelations, then we can put ourselves online and say, I don't really, for instance, I don't know how to learn, or I don't know how to teach, or I don't know how to understand, or I'm limited with my capacity. But if I know that because I'm a vessel for God's unlimited revelations, I can reveal an infinite God through a limited brain and a limited mouth and a limited consciousness, because God is infinite and He can bring these revelations through us. And that's something that we need to take into account when we're trying to accomplish bringing the Geulah. That is exactly what God wants from us. He wants us to break through our limitations, not be limited by our finite understanding of things and finite way of doing things. God definitely wants us to be proactive within this relationship and open to bringing godliness revealed in this physical world down here below. And we do that through learning of the Chassidus and implementing it into our heart and soul. So I'm going to open it for questions if somebody wants, and I'm going to check check this sikha a little bit more, because there's a few more points I want to make. But if anybody wants to make a comment or ask a question, now's your chance. You can unmute yourself. And if you don't have, I'll just continue. One important point that I forgot to mention, it's a known point, that Aron Hakohen, it says, when he passed away, this is a very well-known thing, this is connected to what we learned just now about him, that it says all the Jewish people, men and women, mourned him, because he was known to be the one who made peace between husband and wife. And he was very savvy and smart about it, because he could see the good in everybody. So he was able to go with love and bring peace. And it says that was a higher level than his brother. Moses was mourned, it said, by only the men. So Aaron had this extra special sensitivity, because he was able to see the soul as it is on its highest form, before it's even divided into levels of understanding or awarenesses. So, but obviously, like I said, when the Rebbe tells us this, he's saying that we all have this power to be like Aaron, the high priest. And he says this explicitly also in another place. We all have to see ourselves like a priest in the holy temple. That where we are, even if we don't have this beautiful background, wherever we are, we're in the holy temple, and we're like a high priest. And this is even if we're in the kitchen, or even if we're in a business, and specifically if we're in a place that doesn't seem so holy. That's exactly what God wants us. He wants to make the holiness of the place, the time and the place in our soul, in every place that we are. And if you want, you can go on my YouTube from last week, the Beis Chana class, Beis Chana channel YouTube last week. I spoke about this at length, about how valuable we are, and how valuable each moment we are in, and how valuable the time, space, and our soul is by divine providence, that we can make it holy, like the holy temple. Now, let me just see what else. There was a couple points I'm sure that I left out. The Rebbe brings another example. When the Chabad rabbis would say what's called a maimar, they would teach a Hasidic insight. It was called the Maimer. It was a very holy moment. Hasidim would sing a song beforehand. They would stand in attention, kind of, and they could sense that there was a drawing of godly revelation. The Rebbe would close his eyes. The Rebbe would be in a meditative state and give over something that was a little bit higher, a little bit more esoteric, and seemed a little bit more lofty. And it was a special, it was not given over like as a talk. It was given more as like a drawing down of some godly revelation of insights that were like coming through him, like God putting the words in the Rebbe's mouth. And it would sing with a certain nigun, also with a certain, a tune to it. It was said in a melody that wasn't a regular talking type of language. So then, after this, what's called the Maimer was given, let's say it would take an hour, or whatever it was, then this kind of like, they would sing a happier melody, and would open his eyes, and they would sing something, and then he would maybe explain what the Maimer was in more regular tone, regular voice, analyzing it, discussing it. So the Rebbe says there's two levels also to learning Chassidus. There's this level of being a conduit, of drawing from above to below. Like we said, the blessing of the Kohen, priestly blessing, draws from above to below. And there's the level of using our own brain and our intellect, which is to analyze it and to discuss it and to kind of take it into us, how it applies to us, and try to bring examples and understand how it works within us. And that's from below to above. So that's kind of like something that it's not either or. It's not that we're either drawing from above or bringing from below. We actually try to do both. At certain times, we can ask God, please help us. Give us the inspiration. Give us the insight. Put the thoughts in my head. Put the words in my mouth. We can ask God to draw godliness through us, so we're a vessel, bringing godly revelation through us, to us and to the world. And at times we have to use our own brains and our own minds and work on ourselves to see what our blocks are, what our understandings are, what our motivations and our drives are, and align our self as we are as human beings with our limitations to be more aligned with God's will, and to, see, is God's will my will? Is my will God's will? How can I tune more my will with God's will? How can I tune my understanding more with the higher understanding of God? How can I align my behaviors with what God wants from me? So that's the process of using our mind and our consciousness to bring these incredible concepts and ideas into our reality. I know a few teachers that I know for sure when they're teaching, there are times when they're teaching, they're definitely conduits. You could see just God's pouring a divine inspiration through them. I remember I used to think Rabbi Ginsburg was one of my first Hasidic teachers when I started learning with him when I was 16 or 17. And I used to think that he's just the smartest person in the world. There can't be somebody more genius than him. Maybe there isn't, I don't know. But I remember thinking there's no way a human being with the normal IQ can come up with the insights and the teachings that he's teaching. So many years later, I invited Rabbi Ginsburg to LA to speak a few times. And I remember we were at a private meeting with him with some of his students, and one of them asked him to repeat something that he had taught in the lecture that he had given that day. And he said, "I'm sorry, but I don't remember what I said. I don't know what I said." He said, and I remember being shocked. I was young. I was like, "What do you mean he doesn't know what he said? He doesn't remember what he said?" And now I understand it, because I have that sometimes too. I sometimes enjoy watching myself teach, listening to my own lecture, because sometimes when you put yourself on the line and you're willing to be a conduit of a revelation of understanding of godliness, you don't have exactly. God will put revelations or understandings in your mind as you are explaining it. And we all have that when we're trying to explain something. When we speak, it brings out more of an understanding. When we try to explain something to somebody who doesn't understand, as we're explaining, we'll get new awarenesses. Or even if we're doing art, sometimes we'll come to a new awareness of something that we weren't conscious of before. So any form, art, drawing, dancing, when we're trying to express our understanding, our consciousness, our beliefs, and bring them into drawing down to our understanding, into our emotions, into our actions, we draw down more revelation. So that's drawing down from above to below, and then afterwards, when we want to actually really take it to heart and make our lives a little different, that takes a little bit more of using our cup, using our head, and trying to really analyze how we're taking these awarenesses into our daily activities. How we can change our limiting beliefs, how we can understand how we're blocking ourselves or unblocking ourselves, and how we're feeling, and mesh these ideas and concepts. And that takes work, and that takes sometimes working with a friend, or working with a mentor, or working with a teacher, but it's something that we need to put in effort. So bless you all. We shall all have the blessings from the high priest. One important thing. It's not just the high priest who blesses, right? The Rebbe puts in a footnote also over here that every day in our morning blessings, we say the blessing of the high priest. So it's something to take to heart, that even if you're not in a synagogue, we must say this, and it's a good thing to focus on, because we are drawing down blessings. It's a blessing and a prayer, and we're bringing a higher consciousness. If we're going to tune into it and pay attention and actually say it, it can bring us extra special powers and energies to transform ourselves and transform the world. So thank you, Dina Le, for nodding and being on camera. I appreciate the nice, positive, gorgeous smile of yours, your feedback. And if anybody wants to unmute yourself, let me see also what somebody put in the chat. Let me see. Okay. Welcome, Madison. And welcome, Andrea. And welcome, Avia. And welcome, Elisa. And welcome, Tina Lea. Oh, Andrea came on. Thank you, on camera. Welcome.
I have a question.
Yes. What's your question?
So, I loved everything you said. And I feel like sometimes we know, obviously, the right thing to do is have that consciousness, right? And always try to act like God in our daily life. Mm-hmm. Say something happens and we have a slip of consciousness, and we, I don't know, something takes over, or it's too much for us to handle, and we go back to doing the opposite, or the old pattern, or something that we know is not godly. I heard, and I want your opinion on it too, that there's the double-edged sword. There's you do the act, and then if you beat yourself up about it, it's double bad.
Yes. Okay.
So what's your advice for if we do something that's not of highest consciousness or not very godly, then what's our best course of action?
So first of all, I have to correct myself. It's welcome, Madison or Malka, on your mom's Zoom. Okay. So just for those who are, yes. So I'm so glad you joined us today. So that's a very good question. Yeah, because it's something actually in Tanya that Alter Rebbe also discusses this at length, and you can go through at Chassidus from the Baal Tanya until our Rebbe. It's something that's talked about a lot, and I'll give you a little teeny little taste of what's discussed, because it's something you can really get into in depth. But God really orchestrated everything. He orchestrated the revelations. He orchestrated that we'd have choice, and we'd be able to make bad choices at the moment, or wrong or not unwanted choices. But it was part of God's choice that we should have the possibility of making a mistake and then fixing it. And the fixing can bring us to even closer connection to God. So the point is not to get caught up in the terrible thing that we did, to make a mistake. That was ordained. It was preordained that God hid himself so that we have that struggle. So it's inevitable. It's inevitable that we're not going to be on that level. We're not angels. That we have these blocks. We don't see godliness all the time. And that's the whole point. God wants us to work through the concealment and reveal our connection. He wants us to have this relationship. So it's part of God wants this yearning, the struggle, this hide and seek, this. Now, you can say, how can God want this and this? Which one does God want more? Okay. So Chassidus goes into this concept at length. Also, I can't give you the whole. I can't even tell you I understand it every 100%. But the concept in a nutshell is there's external will and then there's internal will. So God's internal will, what he really, really wants is that we'll be totally connected and totally one and totally in tune and totally aware and totally conscious and totally everything at all times, right? The external will is that he wants us to be able he wants to hide himself, and we actually have to yearn and seek and earn it. That it won't just all come from above to below, but we'll also do our part of connecting to God from below to above. It's like a husband and a wife. It's not just that the husband is always, let's say, giving, or the wife is always giving. There's a combination of one giving and one receiving. In order to receive, you have to be lacking something, right? So there has to be a concealment. There has to be something that you're lacking, that you don't have, that you need from the other person. So that's the thing, is we need God and God needs us. So that's the dynamics of the relationship. God wants us to yearn for him and seek him, and so God has to hide himself so that we'll yearn for him and seek him. So inevitably, there's going to be some mistakes. If we don't see godliness, then we're obviously not on the highest level at that moment if we don't see God. So that's part of God's external will, that he's hiding himself, so that we'll have what's the deeper will, the internal will, pnimi. It's like everything we do also, there's sometimes, we're washing our clothes. Do we really want to wash the clothes? No, it's not necessarily what we want, but we want to have nice clothes. So the internal will is to look beautiful. The external will is to wash the clothes. So it's just it's all God's will, though. So it's all part of it. So it's nothing to feel
Perfect.
guilty. Yeah.
Thank you. So it's almost like sometimes we're sent challenges to bring us closer to God.
Yes, exactly. That's the only reason we have challenges. Is the whole purpose of the concealment is so we come even closer and make a deeper connection and deeper understanding. And it was from our efforts. So we're now more of a partner with God. We're not just a recipient of divine inspiration. We're like, we worked and we earned it and we connected on our own to God. So we have a relationship, like a husband-wife relationship. That's why it says when Mashiach comes, we'll be married. A relationship of the actual consummate, ultimate marriage. Right now it says we're not 100% married to God. We're still distant from each other.
Dating.
And we're dating. Hopefully we're dating intensely, and we're getting very ready to get married very soon.
Dating.
Yes, and the third holy temple, it's like we'll feel the consummation of the marriage.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes. Sure. So blessings to you all. We should have and see you on Facebook. Be all well and share good news very soon.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for joining. Take care.